This is iCastNews.com, live and direct from the United Nations in New York, and I have a privilege and pleasure to introduce you Ambassador Thomas Miller, who just a few days ago became a new president of the United Nations Association and the United States of America. Ambassador Miller, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Your former colleague and veteran of the U.S. diplomacy, the guy that you refer as your boss, once said that the United Nations, we cannot actually blame United Nations for all the fault and everything. It's same like we would blame the Yankee Stadium when the Yankee doesn't play good. So you are getting this new job, knowing that there are different 192 nations. What you expect of this job, actually?
Well, I hope that the former boss you referred to as Richard Holbrooke.
Yes.
I would hope that the United Nations Association, that I'm fortunate enough to be the newly named president and CEO, it will be able to explain to the American people more what the UN does, what its advantages and what its limitations are, and to increase understanding for the UN. And remember, the UN is not just New York. The UN is around the world. It's working in some of the most difficult places in the world on humanitarian, on conflict issues, on human rights issues, on environmental issues. These are all extremely important to all of us. And I hope that we can do a better job of explaining and working on those issues that will move our country forward and benefit the American people.
Obviously, it's going, every knowledgeable man who is talking about or writing about United Nations is saying that it's going to be easier job for you with the new administration in Washington. Yet there are some open issues that are going on and on. Are you actually afraid that still with the new administration in New York, those issues like reform of the Security Council are not going to play well on the playbook, if one would say?
There's some very difficult issues out there, and the issues are difficult not because one administration or another administration, they're difficult issues. You mentioned reform of the Security Council. That's a very tough issue. We just a couple days ago yesterday had the U.S. elected to the Human Rights Council, and previous administration chose not to participate. As a general rule, I personally and my organization believes that engaging is more productive than isolation, and it's something that is a concept that's throughout a lot of these discussions, a lot of these issues that we deal with.
So do you expect the United Nations in general is going to become more popular in the United States than before? We did have somehow the administration that was not popular globally, right. And you witnessed that in Europe, where right. you have been last 15 years. So what can you say about that?
The bottom line is it's going to be a focus on the results, not on the process. And if in fact the UN will become a more positively viewed organization, I think, among the American public, if two things happen. Number one, there's results that are supportive of what people in the United States feel is important. And number two, let's remember that in a lot of places in the United States, what the UN does is not even known. It's not negative, it's not positive, it's just not known. And I think that's which is increasing understanding of what the UN is doing.
Do you have full resources? Can you do that this year? Can you move forward?
Every single non-government organization in the United States, probably around the world, is strained by the economic crisis, and we're no exception. So we're doing the best we can, given pressure on our resources.
What kind of contacts are you going to have here, starting with the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon toward
right.
In exploring these issues, in pursuing with your agenda actually?
Well, again, I want to make it very clear. The United Nations Association is not a government, and we don't represent the U.S. government. We're a non-government organization. I got a very gracious letter from the Secretary General recently, and I look forward to seeing him. I've known him, I've met him before.
In London, while you've been?
No, actually, I came here when I was the Chief Executive Officer of Plan International,
okay.
And I had a meeting with him. He knew our organization extremely well. He was very well very articulate. So to the extent that we have the same mission, which is to promote the value of the UN, but by the same token, not to be afraid to speak out when when there's something that's taking place at the UN that we don't agree with.
For example, there are we mentioned open issues, the issue of corruption, the issue that
Right.
are going on for quite
Right.
some time. How you are going to tackle that? How you are going to be tough on that, since you are a U.S. non-governmental organization?
Well, I think that what we have, the power that we have is words. We don't have armies and we don't have a lot of money.
Is that enough, Ambassador?
Well, you make do with what you got, and if you can frame the message intelligently and you have something to say, it can be pretty powerful. There's nothing more powerful than words articulated in the right way.
Although you are not representing the U.S. government, I would like to use this opportunity to ask you, since you've been ambassador in Bosnia.
Right.
Bosnia is becoming member of the Security Council since Poland withdrawn from her candidacy.
Right.
So what do you think about it? What do you think about prospective of small states becoming non-permanent members with not
Right.
quite a consensus, political consensus like it is in Bosnia?
Well, I think, first of all, it's terrific if Bosnia is elected to the Security Council. I mean, that's a decision that is taken by the General Assembly, et cetera. If at the end of the day Bosnia does become a member of the Security Council, I think that will mark some extraordinary developments, because it was, as you and I both know, it was only 14 years ago, less than 14 years ago, that a war, a terrible, horrific war, ended. And I would be thrilled, just like I've seen Bosnia have peacekeepers in other areas, and the idea of Bosnian peacekeepers 14 years ago would have been laughable. But so anything that moves Bosnia forward, anything that moves Bosnia on the path to becoming kind of a more what's the word? A more regular kind of state, accepted in the community of nations, I think is wonderful. And I would just mention that the 2 years that I spent in Bosnia was probably two of the most productive and happiest years of my life. You have a wonderful, wonderful country with wonderful people and all kind of stuff, and I'm thrilled if this takes place.
And yet to finish with that, actually, another of your friends from the administration that you worked with, and you are 29 years old veteran of the U.S. State Department, Senator Joe Biden, now Vice President Biden, is going to go to Bosnia, to Sarajevo next week. So what kind of message do you think he would convey right now?
Well, Vice President Biden, I know, he's no longer a senator. He came a couple times when I was there. I know him pretty well. He knows Bosnia probably as well as any person in the administration. And I know that, I have a sense, I haven't talked to him obviously, but I have a sense that he's going to speak very frankly, like he does, that he's going to talk about progress in becoming, not only in word but in action, one state, and acting as one state, and I think it's going to be a very, very useful visit for someone of his stature to go and deliver this message.
Should he say something like President Kennedy in Berlin in 1963, Ich bin ein Berliner, or I'm a Bosnian, or talk Bosnian to the Bosnians?
Well, one thing you don't do with Joe Biden is tell him what to say. He always knows what to say.
All right.
And I wouldn't presuppose. But I think he is an extremely knowledgeable person about the Balkans. Was always in the lead when he was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, including as chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And I think he'll convey that message that will be of use to all of us.
Ambassador, thank you very much.
Thank you.